Speaking of blaming the victims to suit the narrative, we're going to move on now to the to a really big tragedy that happened recently. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, you would have seen a slight jump cut there because I was just having a bit of a drink because I was very, very thirsty. But what happened recently in America was something very, very tragic indeed. So in America, Minnesota, at an Annunciation Catholic school and church, a trans-identified, seemingly coming out, some people are trying to defend it as if he was a D-trans or something like that now. But either way, it does seem that a trans-identified person by the name of Robin Westman, who, again, the mother who was supposedly on a Catholic faculty, I believe, herself of a Catholic institution, agreed for him to change his name under the guise of him becoming trans or whatever when he was 17 to Robin Westman from Robert Westman, went into a school and killed two children, and I believe injured many more. No doubt there'll be a lot of emotional and mental damage on the part of the children, which they'll have to contend with as well. It's very, very sad to see, and sadly, this is a part of an emerging pattern that we've seen over the last few years. You only got to look at the Covenant School shooter, I believe it was in Tennessee, who Audrey Hale, maybe it was a trans-identified person, went in again, conducted a truly heinous act. I can't remember exactly how many children were killed in that. And the media, police at the time, so obviously it was under Joe Biden's presidency, they didn't want to release the manifesto. They tried to hide the manifesto. They tried to hide the trans links. But this is something we really need to talk about now. This is something we really need to talk about because it's quite clear that something is very, very sinister going on with the whole, and I've spoken about this before, I've spoken about how sinister this ideology is with James S's, the therapist, for example. The sinister demonic nature of the trans ideology, which ultimately is a complete and utter rejection of any kind of idea of creation and stuff like that. And it tells you a lot when even people who are a lot of atheists nowadays, when they're seeing the way that the culture's shifting, they're starting to realize that maybe these concepts that people have been speaking about, like spiritual war and stuff like that, and the spiritual concepts and spiritual realm and evil forces and stuff, seem to make a lot more sense now. But what happened was, as I said, he went in and murdered two children and injured however many more, including staff. And the really sick thing is, ladies and gentlemen, as we'll play this video for you now in a moment, is the video that he recorded beforehand. So make no mistake, you weren't meant to see any of this. You weren't meant to know that the killer was, trans or mentally ill in this way. And we have to classify it now that trans is just a mental illness. We have to really stop playing nice with this ideology now, because it's outright saying that the goal is to kill children, particularly Christian children. And Reddit had a field day when this happened, saying that, they were happy. So many people on Reddit were happy that this happened, that children got slaughtered. And it just goes to show you the real fruits, the real evil fruits of the secular pro-death culture that we have fostered, especially in today's age. The biggest thing is, ladies and gentlemen, is you can see that this is clearly, and why the whole idea is a complete and utter attack on Christianity, right? It's not like this liberal thing where it's not meant to affect anybody, it's just people living their lives or whatever. No, it is just a complete and utter attack on Christianity from evil forces, as recorded by the killer himself before he went and committed this heinous act. In the video you'll see in a moment, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see some of the slogans and some of the stuff which he wrote on his magazines and on his weapons and stuff. You'll see a target in which, at the head of the target, which he was symbolized, or whether he was actually using for target practice, is the passion of Jesus Christ himself. You'll see so many outright anti-Christian things at the moment, and this is like the manifestation of something straight from the mind of what you would imagine if you walk into like Arkham Asylum. If you walk into Arkham Asylum, for example, and the Joker's escaped, and you see that there's graffiti all over the walls, the ha 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 graffiti all over the walls, as the gravest evils are being done, right? You can clearly see those themes coming through. Imagine if like you put this person has access to all these guns and whatever else, but this demon just took over their mind and was spraying it everywhere. This is exactly what would manifest. So here is a video coming on screen for you in a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Coming on screen now. Watch my 9mm go bang. I'm the Woker, baby. Why so curious? Where's your fucking god now? This is disgusting. This is truly, truly disgusting. So you can see, ladies and gentlemen, those are important as well. We'll go over those in a moment as well. Skibbity rid. This is the demon of Reddit if you gave it chalk markers and told it to go buy a bunch of guns and do whatever else. Another one on you says, fuck everything you stand for. Funniest thing is, if you look at his manifesto, if you look at the killer's written manifesto, which admittedly is quite hard to read, literally on this magazine, I didn't see it before. Literally, you can see under the ha 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 ha. So the Joker comparison was very, very apt indeed. It says more than 10 on one of them. We can only presume that that was potentially a target number. Right, that was potentially a target number. I'm the Woker baby. Why so curious? Ironically, then it says, I love you. So on the one hand, we have, what was it? On the one magazine, the first magazine, it says pain and hate, more than 10. And then on the other magazine, it says, I love you. So which one is it? Which one is it? This just speaks to how truly, truly messed up these people are. And that's why, for all the people that don't want to hurt people's feelings because they want to be nice and everything like that, you need to stop playing into these people's delusions. And we as society need to stop playing into these people's delusions, because it's getting people killed. It's getting themselves killed, and it's hurting them, because this is a gross sickness that's afflicting them, right? This is a gross sickness that was afflicting Robert or Robin, whatever term you want to use, whatever name you want to use, that was enabled by his mother. The fact of the matter is, unless you have a good grasp on what evil is and what good is, and the only way you're really going to get that, at least for the most part, the best way you're going to get that is by understanding a certain book that nobody wants to read, by understanding the Word of God, right? Without a clear understanding of that, you can't even condemn any of this as wrong. You know, in a morally relative world, if we live in this world of relativism and, moral relativism especially, can't really even condemn any of this as wrong, other than some arbitrary harm principle, which really doesn't stack up to any sort of scrutiny, because who gets to define what harm is, right? This is why we can't play nice. This is why the term and the phrase came around, make no peace with evil, came around, is because it results in things like this. And now 2 children, very sadly, obviously had their lives claimed by this. Let's go over some of the things, because the media, particularly ITV's Bradbury, wanted to blame this on far-right radicalization. As we know, anything that isn't the hardest of the hardest left-wing agenda, religion, is classed as far-right nowadays. But here's some of the things that you would have seen on this. You saw the names of 6 previous killers. You saw the names of 6 previous school shooters on this magazine. You saw Orvinen, or Orvinen, however you say it, Lanza, Whitman, Holmes, Russell Yakov, and Lapine. And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, of the information that I could gather, right, and I will bring it up now a bit quick. Let me see if I can bring it up. Here we go. This is what I wanted to bring up. So, the names of 6 school shooters that were labeled on the magazine. You had Pekka Erik Orvinen, who was responsible for the Jokela High School shooting in Finland, November 7th, 2007. Then you also had Vladislav Rosylyakov, who shot up the Kerch Polytechnic College. He was responsible for the Kerch Polytechnic massacre, October the 17th, 2017, killed 20 people. You have Mark Lapine. He was responsible for the École Polytechnique massacre on December 6th, 1989 at the University of Montreal. Then you also had Adam Lanza. He was the Sandy Hook Elementary shooter. That happened in December 2012. Then you had James Holmes. He was the one who shot up the Aurora Theatre in July 2012 during a midnight screening of Dark Knight Rises in Aurora, Colorado. Then you have Charles Whitman. He was known as the Texas Tower Sniper for the University of Texas Tower shooting, August 1st, 1966. And then that was the last one on there, I believe. Yeah, that was the last one, I believe. Now, there's a troubling theme that emerges when you look at some of what these... Obviously, the ideologies range from a lot of things. I believe it was it might have been Mark Lapine, I believe it was. Yeah, Mark Lapine, for example. This is pertinent to bring up because I'm obviously a staunch critic. I'm not going to go to this extent or whatever. In my opinion, this would be another manifestation of the actual thing that he was supposedly fighting against, in my opinion. He supposedly was, or thought in his mind, that he was fighting feminism. He was motivated largely by anti-feminism. That's why a large majority of the students that he targeted were actually women. So he killed 14 women, 13 students and 1 staff member, and wounded others, 10 of which were women, 4 were men, before committing suicide. However, even beyond what supposedly motivated them, because obviously if you're going to do something like this, you're extremely mentally ill, extremely deranged, and don't belong in polite society, right? And I dare say that they were warning signs. But obviously other things as well. What medications were they on? What other factors did they have? But one of the biggest factors in quite a few of these instances, I believe in 4 of them, 4 out of the 6, and I can only say that because one of these people grew up in an intact home, and then the other person they didn't say anything about. But 4 of them had either no father or a very poor father figure. So let me give you some information on these, for example, ladies and gentlemen. It didn't say anything about Orvainen when I looked it up, but you have Vladislav Rosylyakov, for example. He grew up in a troubled family with an abusive alcoholic father, a disabled Afghan war veteran, and a strict Jehovah's Witness mother who restricted his social life. Then we skip down to Mark Lapine. Born to an abusive Algerian father who beat the family and held misogynistic views. And a French-Canadian mother, Lapine changed his name at 14 to distance himself from his father. Had Adam Lanza, who I also believe grew up in a not the best of situations. Yeah, he grew up in a divorced family. His father, Peter Lanza, was a financial executive, and his mother homeschooled him after he exhibited severe social and developmental issues. I believe then James Holmes as well. He was the one that grew up in a stable middle class family. Sorry. So again, not saying that this is a open and shut thing, but the understanding that it can come from anywhere, and obviously mental illness can come from anywhere, right? It can affect you no matter what upbringing you have. But it's interesting to know that 4 of these shooters all had quite poor fathers, it would seem. Whitman was raised in an abusive household by his authoritarian father, Charles Adolphus Whitman Sr., a plumber who inflicted physical violence on the family. His parents divorced shortly before the incident. I spoke about this before because one of the people that I follow on X shared an incident that happened in the UK, I believe it was, where a gang of 10 boys had gone and basically mauled to death a slightly older teenager, I believe it was. I can't remember the exact ages of the boys or anything like that when it was published off the top of my head. I spoke about it a couple of episodes ago. And this is where I think that, or for all the claims that Mark Lapine, for example, thought he was fighting feminism or whatever, I'd argue that it's a manifestation of the ideology ideology itself, because obviously that pretty much goes all the way back to Satanism, and it's only Satan that's relishing in everything that's going on, all the evil that's going on in the world at the moment, whether it's abortion, whether it's apostasy, whether it's school shootings, whatever it is, trans ideology, etc., gender mutilation surgery, all the rest of it. Satan's relishing in all of it. Obviously, a lot of the ideas of feminism completely go antithetical to the way set down by the God of Christianity, as an example. So therefore, we go directly against that. So we can assume where feminism is coming from, especially if you look at the history of feminism, right, and the origins of the feminist movement, and going back to like Wiccan, Wiccan rituals and all stuff like that. The one thing that really does stand out, though, is the lack of a good father figure. That's one of the big lies of feminism, is that men and women are interchangeable. It does make you think, if they'd had, and I'm not saying it would have been any different, but if they'd had a decent father figure, the one that wasn't abusive or wasn't alcoholic, or if, the family structure was good, morally virtuous, and men and women understood their roles and stuff like that, and they both aspired to be better for each other and to glorify God and all the rest of it, maybe possibly things would have been different. Obviously, that's one of many factors. However, medication, mental illness, other things that happen in life, whether one of them was a kid running around and run into a table and it fucked up his brain or whatever. All of these other factors are important to consider as well. But the family, and this is why the family is the bedrock institution of society. Ever since we've let the family go, ever since we've decided the family isn't important, which the government has only relished in, right? Government has only relished in, because one of the biggest things that's in opposition to totalitarian rule is a strong family, right? Maybe that teaches us something about the way that we ought to move forward. Maybe we should stop doing things that bring out the worst in each other, i.e. men and women. Start doing things that bring out the best in each other. Maybe things then will be different. Maybe things then will be different. But there's other things to go through as well that motivated this killer. So as you can see as well, the stark image with this, ladies and gentlemen, that really shows, because for all of the people that say that you can't draw a motive from this, when you see an image like this, when you see that the person has taken the passion of the Christ, passion of the Lord, put it on the head of a target, a human-shaped target, right? And that he's essentially using for target practice. That's a lot of symbolism right there. That's how you know where this is coming from. This is truly demonic. This is truly demonic, and a hatred of anything virtuous, anything holy, anything like that, right? So when you see all the media saying that it's too early to draw a motive, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. It all ties back to the same thing. It all ties back to evil. It all ties back to evil. And you should remember that when all of the elected leaders, such as the mayor of Minneapolis and Jen Psaki and all of the rest of them, Brian Krasenstein and all of the others, right? That when they say now, because it's children that got killed, we shouldn't pray. When it's Christian children that got killed, we shouldn't pray. But yet, when it was any other incident that happened, hopes and prayers, etc., etc. Jacob Frey, I believe it was, came out and said, no, prayers are not enough. Literally, these kids were literally praying, is what he said. As if, prayer is just meant to manifest as some kind of force field that protects you from all kinds of damage or whatever, right? Obviously, people wouldn't understand that. But then people using that to insult the faith of the young children and their families at a time when this absolutely heinous thing has happened, in order to deflect from who the perpetrator was, and the fact that the perpetrator stems exactly from the ideology which the political leaders have spent so much time defending and fostering, because of their own misguided moral compasses, because of their own suicidal empathy, because of their own goals of more political power and stuff like that, from things that we've deemed politically correct, and kids died as a result of it. And then to rub salt in the wound, they say not to pray for them. So, which you should do. Obviously, no, you need to give your guns away. That's what you need to do. That's what you need to do, despite the fact that after the Covenant School shooting, I believe it was, in Tennessee, Tim Waltz, the people of this school actually approached Tim Waltz and said, can we have more funding for security or whatever it was? They said, can we have more measures put in place for security for the kids, please? He never did it. And then they want to come out afterwards and say about political action. Go absolutely fuck yourselves. Go absolutely fuck yourselves. And Americans, make sure you hold on to that Second Amendment. Make sure you don't allow these disgusting politicians to stand on the graves of these children to further take your freedoms away from you in the name of care and in the name of empathy, when they spent so long directly fostering the ideology that led to these kids being murdered. Take it from us in the UK. You don't want to do that. Again, looking at some of the other things as well, ladies and gentlemen, because you can see that this person was indeed radicalized by a lot of different things. Hated Jews, right? You know, they hated Christians as well, obviously, because the attack was on Christians. The attack was on Catholics in particular. But on the barrel of one of the guns, it says, Israel must fall. Now, that could obviously mean the secular state of Israel, but it also could mean, in a biblical sense, the new Israel, as many would argue, which is the church, right? The church must fall. That makes a lot of sense, right? It makes a lot of sense to why there'd be the Passion of the Christ at the head of the figurehead, right? At the head of the target, right? But you also have this graffiti on one of the guns as well, I believe it is, or it looks like it's on one of the sides of the guns anyway. It says 6 million wasn't enough. So you can see that this person was not just anti-Israel in the sense of the anti-secular state of Israel. They're outright anti-Semitic. They're outright anti-Jew, right? And they're outright, in that instance, which is one of the ways that, again, the far left and the far right are not so different. You know, they all tend to coalesce around hatred of the Jews and stuff like that. There's another one listed on there as well. Mohammed Atta, who was one of the ringleaders of the 9/11 operations. This is just truly glorifying all manner of terror and destruction, which is why, again, best liars always marry a bit of truth to the lie. They even got sponsored by BlackRock and Killer Sadist on there as well, allegedly, from one of the other images that I've seen. But as you can see here, on the underside of the trigger housing of one of the pistols, which you can see here, they have Mohammed Atta. Well, they have Atta's name anyway. So you can see that they're one of the ringleaders of the 9/11 operation. But what did ITV come out and do? In true classic British fashion, ITV, Tom Bradby, came out and obviously said that the Minneapolis church shooter was far right and motivated by, anti-Semitic and racist, ideas. Nothing about anti-Christ. Nothing about that he's a far left tranny loony on whatever other medication and hormones, whatever else he was on, right? Now, the fact that, he was enabled by a suicidally empathetic, grossly clouded, supposedly Catholic mother, right? Any excuse to blame everything on the far right, the quote-unquote far right, the UK media will absolutely do. The UK media will absolutely do, as evidenced by ITV themselves.
Even by the standards we've very sadly grown used to, the video apparently recorded by the assailant behind the latest school shooting in Minneapolis was utterly chilling. 2 children were killed, one aged 10, one aged 8. Many more. The assailant appears to have been attracted to far-right ideology, including apparent signs of racism and anti-Semitism. Robert will explain. Also on News at 10 tonight.
So there you go. Again, no mention of anti-Christian sentiment. No mention of anti-Christian sentiment whatsoever. But again, you've only got to look at, again, the shooter, heavily into trans ideology, heavily into queer ideology, anti-Trump, shooting up kids in a Catholic church. These are all hallmarks of the very, very far left. But this is a wider political point as well, for example, that we should all be wary of, ladies and gentlemen. And that is the fact that the far left and the far right, in terms of their ideology, in terms of their methods as well, I'm not saying that there's been, this wave of actual far right Nazi shootings or whatever, but in terms of how they want to apply it, in terms of the totalitarian state that they want to foster, in terms of their love of socialism and all things like that, far left and far right tend to not be so different. Far left and far right tend to not be so different. So again, the best lie, in this instance coming from our mainstream media in the UK, best lie is always one that's married to a hint of truth. Just before we move on with this now, ladies and gentlemen, I do want to put a spotlight on I just want to see if I can find the victims in question, because we should be remembering them. We should be remembering them, especially the good children. some children were yelling at their classmates to get under church pews and threw their bodies over the friends to protect them from gunfire. But sadly, there were, as I said, 2 children that were lost, 2 children that were murdered. There's an 8-year-old boy by the name of Fletcher Merkel, and there was a young girl, I believe, 10-year-old girl, Harper Moisky. So please, ladies and gentlemen, do indeed say some prayers for the souls of these beautiful children, and especially for their families and their loved ones at this time as well. Make sure we want the killer and a memory of him to be lost to eternity, obviously, right? But may the memories of the children, the victims, live on. Here's Fletcher. And here is, damn it, man. And here's Harper. Coming up on screen for you now. While the killer's name should and can be lost to history, let's make sure these children's like the names of the children who were killed at Southport, that their memories and their names always live on. If you enjoyed that clip, then make sure to go on over to the Voice of the Valleys X page at VOT_Valleys on X. We're also on Instagram at Voice of the Valleys. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon. Godspeed.